Greetings, everyone. Welcome to homeschooling. I assume if you're watching this video, you're probably just getting started and you're interested in how to get the basics done as far as setting goals, choosing the right kind of curriculum based on the kind of style that you'd like to raise your family with, and also finding community that will be helpful for you. So, we're going to cover those things in this video. So, hopefully don't overwhelm you, and mostly that you feel encouraged, because I want you to know this thing is you can do this. Like, you can homeschool your kids all the way from kindergarten to graduation if that is what is on your heart to do. So I'm Vicki Tillman. I have raised my 5 kids, all of them homeschooled, all graduated from homeschool. Now they're adults and out there with college degrees, graduate degrees, those that wanted that, and living life and loving life. And I'm really glad for that. So homeschooling was part of that, and the homeschool learning atmosphere was part of that, as well as the homeschool community. So based on my experience and all of my homeschool friends, I've pulled together some ideas for you. So let's start with goal setting. So, one of my friends, when she first started homeschooling a long time ago, had to meet in those days with a local school board official that was assigned to homeschoolers, and show what your plans were for the year, show what you'd done at the end of the year. And so she was sitting with her little evaluator, and he said, "So, do you have any goals?" And she goes like, "What? You mean I gave up everything, of my private time and doing what I wanted to do with life to homeschool all day long, and I don't have any goals? Of course I have goals." And so she pulled out a sheet where she had actually written some goals. And so you don't necessarily need to write your goals down, but boy, does it help, because on a bad day, you can get those out and say, in the long run, we're heading toward those goals. Or you can say, hey, in the long run, we like these goals, but we're going to adapt them. It's just good. In Habakkuk 2:2, it says that you write the vision and make it clear so that when those who read it can run with it, and you're the one that's reading it, helps you keep going in the right direction. So anyway, let's talk about first goal setting. So this, you could call it setting your vision. You could call it setting your long-term goals. But what I'd like you to do is imagine when your teens graduate and they walk across the stage at graduation or across your backyard, however they do their graduation event. What kind of person would you like that teen to be? What do you hope that they have experienced and learned to do over their years of education? What kind of education? What kind of personality? What kind of things have they done? What kind of things do you hope for them in their future? Those, you write those down. I hope for those things. Now, we know this, that we can plan these things and God will direct our paths. So we have to just let God be the guide overall. He can put things in our heart. And the scripture says a man's mind plans his way, but God directs his path. And I always say a mom's mind plans her way, but God directs her path. Is true. Like, we're going to make these goals, but they are adaptable to what God wants. But it keeps us going in a direction. And so we hold them humbly and then adaptable. And then we trust God with the outcome. Okay. All right. So just imagine, though, kind of, educationally, socially, spiritually, physically, just life experiences. What do you want for those kids at graduation? Well, that's your vision, and you can write it down. You could also make a mission statement if you like these kind of things. And so you have kind of like, this is my guide, for life. But at least write down what you'd like to have them have done. Okay. All right. That then is your long-term goal. That's a pretty cool thing. Now, if someone comes up to you and says, like, oh, you really need to do this kind of curriculum because that's the only way to homeschool, you say to them these 2 things. One, there's not one right way to homeschool. And so you can't tell me that's the right way. And two is that either lines up with what we're interested in, with our goals, or it doesn't. So we'll pass that opportunity by, but just thanks. Because there's so many kinds of curriculum these days. There's so many styles that we can easily get off track by peer pressure. You have to do it this way. But no, you want to do education your way for your specific teens, and your specific children. So, okay. All right. So you're writing down educational goals, personal goals, spiritual goals, physical goals, experiential goals, what hopefully they have done by the time they graduated. Okay, write those down. Those are long-term goals. Then you want to make some short-term goals, okay? And those you write down over this school year. I would like for them in each of those areas to have experienced or completed curriculum-wise, and that's going to help you choose curriculum. So you've got long-term goals, you got short-term goals. Then you want to think about also, what are your children's personalities? What are their styles? So if you got a really high energy kid, you don't want to sit them down with a high structured curriculum. If you have a kid who loves formats and loves to follow down, a checklist, then that kid would feel very uncomfortable with an unschooling situation. So you think about, what are your kids' interests, what's their personalities, and that kind of begins to be a part of the goal setting and a part of the curriculum choice situation that you got. Okay. And then you think about what your personality is like. What can you stand? So, like for me, personality wise, I like books with color in them. If we're going to use a textbook, that sounds really cheesy, but you know what? I'm easily distractible. So if I'm working with a kid in a math book, if it has color, it's going to be easier for me. So it's just a thing, to think about. So, all right. So those are long-term goals, some basic short-term goals. Now let's think about the style of homeschooling that will fit those goals and your family's personality. So, all right. So the homeschool styles and homeschool curriculum, people who write about homeschooling are going to fit on like a continuum. And it goes from very, very structured to very, very unstructured. So you think that big, long continuum, very structured, very unstructured, and all kinds of things in between. Can you imagine that? So there are so many choices. What you are probably going to find over time is that you're a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but this is going to get you started. Okay. All right. So our long-term goals in our long-term our continuum here, all right, is guided by how our kids' personalities and learning styles are, what our goals are. All right, so let's say you've got a kid who is really, really check off a checklist kid, really likes rhythm, routine, sameness, boundaries. They feel good in a box. And there is nothing wrong with that. Kids who are in that kind of a style, well, then let them be, like there is nothing wrong with that. So at that very structured end of the continuum, you will find education styles that are very much like a school format, just at home. Okay. And so if you look at online programs like K-12 or Keystone, sometimes the online publishers, that especially traditional textbook publishers like Abeka, Bob Jones University, have classes that are very much like a classroom setting. So it's like they're sitting in class, they're doing a classroom kind of instruction. And so it's very checklisty. They know when they start, they know when they finish, and so that's very, very good for kids who do structures. Okay, and then almost that structured or structured, highly structured in a little bit different way are the classical education publishers and co-ops and online schools. And there's a bunch of those that are available. And classical education is based on Latin. So everything comes out of traditional Latin type education. And so the kids learn Latin all the way through school, and they learn a basic rhythm. So they start with grammar and they go to rhetoric. And so they're learning Latin thinking and speaking. They're learning classics. So they read a lot of classic literature. They do a lot of writing. And so it's very intense. So kids who really like intensity, that is marvelous. If they adapt to languages, they're really good with that kind of thing. They will love this kind of thing. If they love reading and writing, they would love classical education. So some of the publishers of that, I know my son used to teach in a classical school and had kind of a mixture with homeschoolers and regular school. And they used Veritas Press, and he actually wrote some for one of their textbooks. Memoria Press, Classical School Press. So those, and there's more than that out there. So you kind of have to dig around and look at those. And you will find some online schools that use classical education. So if you're starting out and you have a kid that's very digitally oriented and wants that kind of education online, they will find that there too. So Google is your friend, and asking around the homeschool community is your friend. All right. So that's the highly structured end of the continuum. A little less structured is it's still very structured, but less. So kind of structured free at the same time. So that would be Charlotte Mason and the Waldorf style. So both of those are very experiential, kind of hands-on curriculum in that you're going outside, you're seeing nature, you're creating art. You are experiencing beauty. So it's some of the classical truth, beauty, and goodness that you would get in classical, and just leaning more into the being in nature and doing arts and listening to music. So it's very beauty oriented, experiential oriented curriculum. And so those you just go online and do Charlotte Mason curriculum and Waldorf curriculum. And so those are very often like smaller independent publishers, and you read reviews and find something that fits your family style a little bit. Okay, all right. So we got highly structured, got moderately structured. So those that are more, you're getting outside, you're doing the arts kind of stuff, but doing a lot of, they also do dictation writing. You're doing a lot of reading real books. So it is structured. You've got formats you're gonna have to follow to get everything done. Okay. Then you go to more moderately structured, and that tends to be what we call goal-driven. And so you teach kids by helping them set their goals for the year, like they're part of the goal setting process. And so you talk about the long-term goals of the family and for your child, but also invite them in on the process of this year's goals. What kind of things would you like to learn this year? And you look at textbooks together. You know, does this look more interesting? Does this look interesting? You go online and look at different schools and get them involved in the process. Then they set goals. If they're teenagers, you teach them some SMART goals and let them write down some of their own SMART goals, how they're going to get there. So it's teaching them the life skills to go on and own their own education and career, especially as they go through high school and then they're ready to launch into college. So it's kind of an empowerment kind of format. So publishers that are more goal-driven often are the independent publishers like Seven Sisters Homeschool, which is no busy work curriculum. So teens pick the level that they're going to work on. So, like if they have special needs, there's one level, or just average or college prep or honors level. according to the competitiveness they need for what their goals are for after high school. And so you want to, with kids like that, you get them involved in the goal setting. So, by the way, Seven Sisters Homeschool has a freebie download that is a SMART Goals worksheet and the instructions on how to do SMART Goals for teens. And so you can download that at Seven Sisters Homeschool for free. All right. And so kids who need to choose their aims for the year, like I want to do some rigorous college prep in this area, but I just want to do some average kind of stuff in this area. It helps them kind of function in their different lanes that they may be interested in. All righty. And so let's go down then the continuum. So we started out with very, very structured, very rigid, more moderate, and then the very moderate goal driven. And you'll find also in the goal driven, you do a lot of eclectic, a little bit of this curriculum, a little bit of that curriculum, this kind of format, that kind of format. All right. And then a relaxed homeschool is down at the other end. And relaxed homeschooling can be like the delight driven kind of formats where children and teens will pick their things they're delighted about and really spend their energy reading and experiencing, creating, writing. And so their education is kind of built around what they're interested in. And then you build their transcripts if they're in high school based on those experiences. So a little bit more work for mom, and you want to get the teen involved in that if they need a transcript with certain credits for graduation, if they're thinking college at a rigorous college afterwards. But it definitely keeps teens loving education, and especially children. If they start learning that learning is fun, and that they can explore things they're interested in at an early age, they can lean into that. So if you look up unschooling, delight-driven schooling, life schooling, all of those tend to have lots of bloggers with lots of ideas. And because basically you're doing what feels right to you and then creating out of that. One of the very first people who really, really taught a lot about that more relaxed into the continuum is that's Mary Hood. And she wrote the book a long time ago, The Relaxed Homeschool, and has always been a voice in letting your children learn what they love and lean into what they love. So she has always been a force. You can look up Mary Hood and The Relaxed Homeschool to kind of get the inspiration and authority there on that. Okay, so you can see the whole curriculum and style continuum. There's a lot. And you know what? There's not one right way to homeschool. And so you can explore a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You can try this year. And if it doesn't work, you get rid of that and try something else, because there's no, hard and fast rule there. Now, you have state requirements, and we got to meet state requirements. Yes. And then kids who are going to a competitive college, or they need to meet graduation requirements, there's some things you got to find a way to tick those boxes off. So we could go into a whole thing about homeschooling high school, but I think Lana Sear is going to handle that for you. So, all right. And then let's see, we want to talk about then once you choose curriculum ideas, do some exploring, ask around. You can choose different formats. So these days, young people can do some courses asynchronously online, so they do it at their own pace. They can do live classes online. You can do online textbooks, or downloadable PDF textbooks, which for college prep kids is a really cool idea, because a lot of their course textbooks in college level these days are the PDFs or the online textbooks. They can do print textbooks, or you can print up, the PDF online textbooks. So according to your style, a lot with our younger kids, we've just said, these are our goals for the year for a certain course, and like history or science. And then we just find hands-on activities and field trips to do. And so then we want log sheets and, our portfolio to put evidence of instruction there, or for high schoolers, logging hours also, so they get their credits in. So you think about the format that you would like to use: textbooky, online, not online, live, asynchronous, or co-ops, or dual enrollment at high school level, umbrella school classes. So like for me, by the time my kids got to be middle school and especially high school, there were courses I did not want to teach. Like I didn't want to do the dissection part of biology. And so we always did biology classes either in co-op or in our umbrella school classes. I don't love math. So by high school level, other teachers were teaching my kids math, either at co-op or at the umbrella school. So, and then now that there's online courses, boy, they would have been doing that. High school level teens at a certain age can start doing dual enrollment. So if they're ready to take a high school class, if they're ready to follow the syllabus on their own and get into the college classroom setting, then they can do that and earn some college credit while they're at it. So you sit down with your young person and you say, what feels best to you? And if you're looking at curriculum either online or in textbook form, if you can get samples, look at excerpts, or if somebody else has some that you can look at theirs and say, hey, does this look interesting? That's a nice thing. So all righty. All right. So let's talk about then, as we're getting advice, from other people, like, what did y'all like? What did y'all like? Remember, you're getting advice, but not you have tos, like this is not the only curriculum. So I remember being a young homeschool mom. And in those days, there weren't very many publishers that allowed homeschool sales, because you can tell I'm a dinosaur, been around since the early days. And so the few homeschool publishers would say, well, we have the really only way to do it. And so it was, sometimes I couldn't afford that. Because I was raising kids and on a budget. And so I found that as I prayed and as I followed my goals, that very seldom did we have to buy anybody's curriculum that told us that we had to buy their curriculum, and that we could do what was best for our kids, and that it often would adapt over time. And so our goals would change, and definitely what we loved curriculum wise would change. And, my kids tend to be the ones that ended up in the moderate area, and a lot of eclectic, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then they would choose some kind of average or college prep levels to function on, and then a few honors level at the high school level, so that they really dived into something they liked. And that was my kids. So your job is to follow what God is putting on your heart, because there's not one right way to homeschool, but you can do this, and you will be so glad that you did. Now, that naturally leads into, it's hard to do it alone. Us moms need friends. Our kids need friends. And, people say, what about socialization? And they think our kids are locked in the basement. Like some of our kids' friends in the early days would say, yeah, my mom locks me in the basement and brings a sandwich down to me. And they were kidding, but sometimes people would believe them. So it's not true at all. Like socialization is passing on what's important in our generation to the next generation, training them up in the things that are important for success in life. That's socialization. And very often our homeschool kids are so well prepared for life because they have been socialized to believe in themselves, to believe in other people, to be polite, to be well-spoken, because we've included those in goals. So like for my kids, I wanted them to know how to interact, with different age groups, how to handle different settings socially. And those were some of the goals we worked in. And, most homeschool moms are working on those kind of skills with their kids. So anyway, but our kids need those friends. We moms need some friends too. and because it feels good to have friends. And it's really nice if some of our friends are also homeschooling, because then we can tell stories together and we can pray for each other. So I know my friends at Seven Sisters are all originally from co-op together. So that's, everybody met there and are just sisters in the Lord, although two are actually biological sisters. So anyway, you need friends. And so how do you find friends if you're new to homeschooling or you're new to the area? So the number one way I have found when I needed to make new homeschool friends, if we moved or are getting involved in a new homeschool community, is I would go and volunteer. That's the number one way. So you don't drop kids off at co-op or at group classes if they're taking those and then drive off and get your errands done. Instead, you stay there and you volunteer to do anything. And then over time, what happens is the other volunteers and the other staff, everybody gets to know each other. And over time, then friendships grow, and they can be very deep and meaningful friends, or just having fun friends, or let me tell you about my day friends. But that's the number one way. Another way, my friend LaTanya Moore was telling me that when they move to a new area, one of the first things she does is go regularly to the library. And they will find out when there are special events there for young people. Sometimes homeschool things will happen there that are open to the public, and sometimes just young people classes. And almost always, as she goes to that, she's going to find another homeschool mom. And so that is an excellent way to find homeschool friends. Other ways to do it are homeschool community events. So a lot of times there are choirs or sports teams or science fairs or things like that. You go and get involved in those kind of things. If you can hang around and help clean up afterwards, you are going to make some friends. Even if you just go and are there and chat with other moms, for just a couple of minutes over time, it's going to build friendships. I'm not kidding. I am so not kidding. Homeschool moms love to make friends, and sometimes they might be a little bit shy. And so you do the getting to knows. So I always say, when you walk into a new setting with homeschool moms or any moms, is you walk into the room. I teach this to my teens too. With your shoulders back, your chin up, and a little bit of smile, or a little Mona Lisa smile. Shoulders back, chin up. That's an invitational nonverbal. If you can go and be busy doing something, you have something your hands are doing, or have something in your hands like a soda or something, for some reason, that tends to be a way people want to talk to you. So shoulders back, chin up, smile, something in your hands, or your hands are doing something. And basically, by the end of the day, somebody's going to talk to you usually. Yeah. And then what you do is you ask them questions. Tell me how long you've been homeschooling. How many kids are you homeschooling? To get other people talking about themselves, they will just think you're the best friend. So because people like to be noticed, they like to tell about their story. So that's your homeschool mom friend tool. You will be glad you did that. So my very best friends are the friends that I have homeschooled with, been in the trenches with. And those are some that I have only known, for a few years, and some that I've known for 30 some years. So there's old track records, and it's worth the investment. All right, then the last way to find homeschool friends is the easiest one of all. So you want to do this, but don't only do this if possible. So sometimes this is all you can do because this is where life is. But definitely find some digital friends. So I have some very, very dear friends that I have never met in person, and we are very close. We message back and forth, and we pray, and do a lot of advice giving back and forth, but we've never met in person. So if you look in several of the homeschool Facebook groups, you will find that there's some really good interactive advice giving, encouragement groups. One of the groups that is just huge, and so you never run out of ways to get encouragement and advice, is It's Not That Hard. So there's an It's Not That Hard to Homeschool High School, and then there's It's Not That Hard to Homeschool K through 8. So it's a just really big group. Machi has a Facebook. And so, I mean, that definitely want to do that because that's local. And then Seven Sisters Homeschool, you can tell I'm partial, has a Facebook group where you can ask, especially high school related questions, get encouragement. Another group is Simply Homeschool. And so that is a smaller, very nurturing group, and you can always get some warm encouragement there. Okay, all right, so that's a good start on community. So I encourage everyone, if you're in the Maryland area, do join Machi because you're not going to run out of encouragement and support there. And thank you very much for hanging in here and getting through this long video today. You can do this homeschool thing. It's going to be the most fun, exciting, challenging, and prayer needing times of your life. Have a good time. Okay.